Welcome to the Undiscovered Gems podcast, hosted by NBA legend and business powerhouse Charles D. Smith, highlighting today's best and brightest business minds.
Hello, and welcome to Undiscovered Gems. I'm your host, Charles D. Smith. We have another incredible show for you today. Today, we have Sara Regester. Sara's got a unique skill set that I think we're all going to enjoy during this interview. Sara's a founder of Directions for Wellness. She's also the creator of stress mastery programs, and we'll get into that. But more importantly, while Sara was working in the hospital for years, she's been able to watch, kind of detect, and get a real clear understanding of how the connection between stress and our physical healing. And that's something that I want to know more about. Sara, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Charles.
Thank you for being on. So, Sara, we want to hop right into this. One, how did you get into your career? We see all these acronyms on the screen.
Yes.
I know what RN is, but BSN, NBC. Why don't you talk about your acronyms and then tell us how you got into your career?
Yes, of course. Well, I was a nurse in the clinical setting for many, many, many years. And as a healthcare professional, I really valued my career and wanted to be the very best nurse. And I really never said no to any assignments. I took on extra jobs. And so with this very robust career that I had, I actually opened the door to my own stress. And I could see many times over and over how I kept wiping out my own health from stress. And I would take a step back, heal myself, and then get back into the pattern of stress again and wipe out my health again. So I recognized in myself the connection between wanting to be successful and, really living fully, and yet how I kept really impacting my own health. And what I saw in my patients was similar. As a nurse taking care of people, my area was primarily cardiac medicine. And, I saw in my own patients how they came to the hospital and in these very adverse conditions. Some met that challenge and got well, and some, didn't meet it and didn't do well. And I was really interested in that mind, body, spirit connection to wellness as I witnessed it in my patients who got better, who didn't, despite whatever happened while they were in the hospital. It was very intriguing to me, that whole journey that happens to people through their physical health, and who overcomes and who succumbs, so to speak. And so it translated for me as an epiphany moment when I thought, wow, this is really interesting that I can heal myself from these very significant health problems. If I can heal myself, how could I help other people heal themselves? And so that was sort of the launch into my journey of truly wanting to be involved with the mind, body, spirit approach to health and wellness. And so after my 30-something year career, I actually went to Duke Integrative Medicine and was trained as an integrative health coach. So those initials mean that I'm nationally board certified, Duke trained, to really help people rewire their health and their lifestyle with a mind, body, spirit approach that truly creates transformation. And also what makes me unique is there is a place in Western medicine. We do need Western medicine for diagnosis and treatments, but the spiritual part is really kind of my, I would say, expertise, because I also, through this journey, have studied a process of shamanic healing. And so I bring that mind, body, spirit into the work that I do with my clients, and really creates that, how can we grow from our stress? How can we let stress not stop us in our tracks, sabotage our key relationships, and wipe out our health? And so that's really my message: is don't manage your stress. Learn how to be good at it when you're triggered by it.
Sara, you mentioned your own stress. Now, two things comes to mind: stress from your day-to-day job, or is there a part of stress that's being transferred to you from your patients?
It was both, because you see, I had no boundaries. I never said no on the job. I wanted to be successful and recognized by my peers and my colleagues. And so there was a way that I worked that was really kind of overextending myself and overgiving of my energy. So the way I worked was how the stress really impacted me. And I had this very profound connection with my patients that I was able to hold space for them. And as cardiac patients, what I recognized is that their broken heart physically many times translated to how they were brokenhearted in their life. And so I definitely saw that connection of what happens to the physical body many times translates from our life experience. And so for me, the way I was working and supporting my patients created the door that opened for me to many very significant health problems that literally stopped me in my tracks until I could, get myself going again.
Can you talk a little bit more about the spiritual aspect? Does faith have anything to do with that?
It has a huge amount to do with it in the sense that, we're all individual as we experience a spiritual practice or our spiritual beliefs. Like there's many ways. I mean, some people it might be nature, another person it might be prayer. Some people might have a religion. It's very important that we have that something greater than ourselves to lean into, to trust that there's a bigger kind of support system that we have. And so in that sense, my message is really how we can grow and evolve from our stress, from our physical health. That as physical beings, the way we experience life is through our physical bodies, but somewhere inside of us is a spirit that is here to evolve and grow into the best person we can be. And that constant evolution through our lifetime of how we invest in our personal growth. And for you, for example, as an athlete, like what you did to refine your performance, how that would have also impacted your character. That's really why we're here is, how can we grow into the best version of ourselves? And many times when we have a physical affliction or a lot of stress in our lives, it can be a knock from spirit that's really helping us wake up and recognize, hey, I need to change this. Something I need to move beyond this. Or how can I grow from this experience? And so I can recognize in myself and in my patients that I took care of and my coaching clients that sometimes our most challenging adversities in life are actually the greatest opportunity for us to grow as a person.
When you talk about something greater than us, anxiety and stress kind of go hand in hand. And what's your take on when you see your patients, they get anxiety based on their illness, which obviously is a part of stress. If it's something greater than them, do they have a better way of overcoming it? It sits on them because they're trying to do it themselves? How does that work?
Yes. So it's actually important to recognize that the way someone engages with their health or their stress, it's important to recognize that we don't have to be stuck with that label, that identity. And if we are having a challenge with stress that leads us into anxiety, it tells me that what's really helpful is to have some strategies and some tools and practices to really help yourself to center, to be more present, and to be able to use your free will to choose a different attitude or approach. That anxiety will keep us stuck in a rut and inner dialogue and feeling like we're in the future, imagining the worst case scenario of what could happen, where really the invitation is, how can I come back to this moment here in what I do have control over, what I can do for myself to get myself off the edge of the anxiety cliff. And so it's not necessarily what I'm proposing a mental health approach, in the sense I'm not trained in mental health as that area of clinical practice.
Sure.
But how can I be more mindful and centered? And when I'm feeling the internal freak out or the internal dialogue running amok, what strategy can I give myself that I can get myself back into center, back into focus, and not the energy that in stress and anxiety is like out and we lose energy, versus where I want to go is I want to drop in and focus and tap into that inner knowing where the solution is, where I can have an impact, or where there's something that I can control. And so what I witnessed is that when you change your life, when you make changes to your attitude or your thinking, your health gets better. That when people are stuck in the identity of, I have this affliction, I have this diagnosis, and it becomes a box or a limitation, versus how can you meet that physical health challenge in a way that actually will leverage your opportunity to change your pattern in a way that will help you move through it, whether it means full recovery, less symptoms, more like less frequency of symptoms. Healing is not always physical. Healing can be an experience, mental or emotional or spiritual. And so you can't separate those parts of who we are as humans. We're all of that. We are an emotional, physical, mental, spiritual being. And so when you look at that holistic approach, that there's something that we can rewire in our stress patterns so that we can actually leverage that boost of energy to grow with, and not necessarily have it take us down.
Right. Sarah, you hear people say words matter. And so all the patients that you've seen over the years when you were in the hospital, what can you tell us about the personalities of the people and how they dealt with their illness? Like somebody, you can say to somebody, how you doing? They say, hanging in there. Or somebody can be feeling bad and you say, how are you doing today? I feel great. Do words matter? And did you make a connection? Is there something to do with that as well?
I would say definitely words matter, because if you say, I have cancer, at some point that's a reality if that's your diagnosis. But what if your attitude was, I'm healing from cancer, or I'm, meeting my cancer in a way that I'm looking for how I can get through this. So there's a resilience attitude of not being stuck and labeled and taking on the identity, but more the attitude would be, how is this my challenge right now that I'm going to meet? And I'm going to try whatever I need to do to find my healing. So I focus on my healing is the attitude that brings a shift in the physical symptoms. The person that's going to be stuck in pity, why me? This isn't fair. They're angry at life. They're angry at God, they blame that person. They're going to be stuck in their soup until they have enough kind of attitude to say, hey, nothing's going to change till I change. And when we change our life, our health gets better. That's what I can see all day long.
Right. Well, with all this knowledge, and we're going to continue, didn't you write a book on your on everything that you've learned?
Yes, I did. My book is called The Courage to Shine.
Hold it up again. Let me see the cover.
Courage to Shine, How to Feel Confident Outside Your Comfort Zone. And this is actually a memoir where I wrote very specifically about my journey as a stress junkie, because I was very addicted to the stress hormones that gave me the juice to keep going. And, how I learned from my own kind of spiritual awakening to recognize that I needed to make some changes, and how I became a stress mastery expert wasn't from curriculum. It was from my own life experience and what I share with others. And in this book, it also offers some practices and some teachings that come both from my shamanic lineage and from the new science of stress. And so it talks about, for example, one of the key factors for anyone who has a lot of stress in their life. This is what's important to recognize. If person A has a very stressful life and they say, oh my gosh, I've got to end this stress or it's going to kill me, that person will have more health problems, shorter longevity, feel the impact of the negative result of stress. Person B is equally busy, crazy life, and they think, oh my gosh, I'm so busy. I better figure out how I'm going to get through this. What can I do? That person doesn't believe that stress is harmful. They're going to live longer and healthier simply because how they think about their stress is very different. So one of the key principles I teach people are the positive approaches or responses when you're triggered in stress, where most people have habitually default the kind of fight or flight response for everything, whether it's something at work or you blew up with your spouse in the kitchen. What if you had some other ways to respond that's not like trying to kill a fly swatter with a machine gun? We don't always need that whole full-on fight or flight, adrenaline running, cortisol pumping kind of response. We do want it if we need to save our lives and avoid a car accident or something. But you don't need that response in your day-to-day when your life is not under threat. And so for people that really run that kind of response habitually, they can easily really take themselves out from their stress.
Right. When someone picks up your memoir and they read it in its entirety, what do they walk away with? What is their knowledge base or their experience after they read your memoir?
Well, because I'm so transparent in this book in applying, this is how I experience stress at work or with tyrants or in my relationships or, the whole sharing my story, it helps other people relate to their own story in a way through new awareness. And whenever you can gain a new perspective, that's what gives you hope to shift how you think about your stress or your own life pain in a way that gives you hope. And then with the practices in here, it gives you some very pragmatic practices that you can try that actually can be like your toolbox. It's going to help you in your life.
Right. So your stress mastery program, I'm assuming that it's a takeoff of your book, and there's some really great information there. Talk about that a little bit, because I'm making an assumption that you developed a program that, based on all your experience, that helps people move from one space to another. So tell us about your program.
Yes. Well, actually, the book probably came from the programs first. Was that when I became an integrative health coach and stress was my niche, so to speak, and the people I support are those high-performing, success-driven individuals who really look like they have their life together on the outside, or they really value their leadership and how they're showing up strong in their life, whether it's through their community or through their work or their family. But on the inside, it's where that insecurity is, or that pushing yourself, worrying about what people will think about me. And, that internal game is where the real stress is, the insecurity and the doubt and the fear. And so that's really where my sweet spot is the internal transformation, so that you can actually feel more confident on the inside, so that you can be more authentic and put yourself out there more confidently on the outside. And so the stress mastery programs are actually an umbrella where I give this interactive workshop where the public speaking I do, it's not just sit and listen, but let's do this together, kind of an experience. And then I work with clients one-on-one. Usually the best results for transformation is in a 3-month program where we build from one session to the next. And I would also say that there's an individual session that I do because of the training I have in, I would say, transformational healing, that my initial session is a standalone, and it's called the stress transformation session. And we just get in there and we look at your pattern. What's your proclivity? Where do you open the door to this? How do you close the door? And so I have certain tools that I've been trained in from this shamanic lineage that I study, that I'm able to kind of bring the Western diagnosis and health reality into the spiritual realm in a way that's a coaching, let's do this together, let's explore and create a plan that will support you to take those baby steps to move forward. And so that it's very empowering. And so when I witnessed in my clients and in the communities that I was speaking to, and in businesses, a 6-week stress turnaround for their leadership, like a lunch and learn program. So the more I worked with clients, I really could witness how I found the secret to individually supporting people to experience their own transformation with their stress. But whether it's an individual or in a group setting, how the basic principles, sometimes people just need some new wisdom or some new tools that they've already taken a lot of workshops. They've already read self-help books. These stress mastery programs, like I said, it's not managing stress. It's when you're triggered by your stress, it's probably something that's important to you. There's something that you value. And so you don't want to get rid of your kids if your children are stressing you out. You want to find a way to meet that challenge that's successful. And so that's my principle with stress mastery. It's like when things you care about are stressing you out, well, let's find a different way that you can actually meet that. And that's where the real growth comes. When people can meet those challenging situations or people at work or, the things happening at home and the dynamics, that when the individual works on themselves and their own internal stress, many times it translates to more empowering relationships in the marriage, for example, or in the workplace. And so there is something like we probably will never have work-life balance, really, when we're in a family, in a career, in a community, a church community or something like this. But how can I prioritize the values that are really important to me? And how can I recognize, hey, this is a value that's competing with another value. This is what's behind my stress. And so this is really what's important to understand. What is it about that situation that's in the root of the stress that I actually can see and understand for myself?
Sure. So it sounds like your book is really a self-help book for those who read it. Now, you've also talked about your journey and different experiences you've had personally that kind of puts you on this track of understanding. Are there any key moments that you can share or key experiences that really triggered a deeper yearning to want to understand what is going on here? So do you have any experiences like that you can share?
I do. And, that was kind of the one story that I opened the book with. But it was something I witnessed often, was in my patients. And it was like 2:00 in the morning. And I had this elderly gentleman who'd had open heart surgery and he was wide awake. And I was doing my rounds, checking on him. And we had this conversation. And that's really the moment when I recognized, okay, this man just had a physical heart surgery and he's now kind of reflecting on his life and the experiences that were really his emotional broken heart. And in that moment, the connection of holding space for another and feeling the humanity of that bigger connection to the mind, body, spirit through our physical is the moment when I recognized, okay, this is like heart healing. And I would say the theme in this book truly is how to heal your broken heart from the past pain, from the habits we have that we sabotage ourselves with. And that heart nurse that I was is still who I am, even though I'm in a coaching modality, helping people kind of heal on the inside and heal their relationships and their work environments on the outside. And then that way, when you do an assessment about your perception of stress, at the start of the program and at the end of the program, the number is greatly reduced. Just doing an assessment of, how have you transformed? Well, here it is on paper. We can see an outcome.
Right. One of your practices is shamanism. And you mentioned it earlier. What is that and how do you practice it?
That's a great question, Charles, because there's a lot of misunderstanding about what shamanism is. And I would say it's not a religion, but it is using nature to heal, using nature to rebalance. And if you think about when you go out in the woods or to the ocean, how much better you feel when you put yourself in nature. And so with shamanism, it's using both teachings and wisdom about human evolution, character refinement, self-healing, but it uses ceremony to actually increase the rate of transformation. That when you get a teaching and you learn something and then you take it into a physical experience that involves like mineral world, plant world, animal world, nature, that really increases the rate of transformation of how you can integrate things that you're learning and how you're healing. And so it's using ceremony and a ceremonial process along with giving people wisdom. And so this is a community that I have been studying for 22 years, and I teach internationally from this same lineage that I study. And I've incorporated some of the spiritual teachings and practices into my coaching practice because I can recognize that people often are seeking a way to have a deeper connection to spirit or a deeper understanding of how to connect with spirit beyond like going to church and praying in a community. How do I individually make my connection stronger? And so that's where I can help people regardless of their religion, their faith, their not faith. I can meet people where they are to find the context of what will support them to recognize who they are as that kind of spiritual being having a human being experience. That's how I meet people.
Interesting. Have you had any experiences in the hospital where you just mentioned someone who maybe has no faith and you can see where the stress is just eating at them? Have you had an opportunity to kind of talk someone through that for them to feel better, speak more positively and see the change take place? And then at the end, they thanked you for it.
Yes. In the sense that it's about deep listening, holding space, not having any judgment, not trying to fix or problem solve. And I would call that, how you really listen, support, and then maybe challenge. Like, I hear you saying that your life isn't worth living. Is that really true for you? Or tell me more about that. There's something about not trying to talk them out of it, but be with them in that conversation.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And
when people are in the hospital, they're very vulnerable. I mean, like they'll say things or they're looking at life like they never have before. And so that was my privilege as a nurse at that time in my life and my career, was to hold space for them.
If you could think of one or two things based on your education that you gave to our audience today, what are two things that they should take away from this show?
I would say, the two things are, the more you have a practice to just drop in and breathe into your lower belly with some slow, deep breaths, that our slow, deep breathing is our internal go-to mechanism that's with us all day long to help us stay focused, to help us stay out of the mental dialogue and drop in to hear that inner wisdom, is simply slow, deep breaths. That's as simple as it can be.
Okay.
And then as far as the second, I would say it's really important that people are curious, that they have an open mind and they're willing to try many things to approach their health and wellness. It's not just a one-pronged approach. It's everything. It's the yoga, it's the diet, it's the walking in nature, it's the healing your relationships. That true healing is a multi-pronged approach. And I would say, that's really the key, is not thinking it's just the prescription or the pill or the procedure. It's how you change your life is where the healing really comes.
All right. Sara, can you do me a favor and hold the book up again and tell people how they can actually get it?
Yes. So this book, The Courage to Shine, How to Feel Confident Outside Your Comfort Zone, is available on Audible, Amazon, Apple Books. And it's not a real long book, but it has a lot of punch. and a very pragmatic kind of a unique approach to your internal stress, and as well as, addressing how we can deal with our outside stress. It's quite educational, but also, really has some strong application.
Awesome. Sara, through your journey and your experiences, I see why you're the professional of the year. You've been really able to capture your own education through your own journey, through patients, and you've had the presence of mind to really get in tune to it. So people like that are experts, and that's how you become an expert. So thank you for sharing your wisdom today on Undiscovered Gems. Hope to have you back one day. And this was truly an experience for me and the rest of the audience. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much, Charles.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Undiscovered Gems with our host, Charles D. Smith, highlighting today's best and brightest business minds. Brought to you by Pods Entertainment Group.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.